What's up everyone? Welcome back to the Yellow Jeepin' channel. On today's episode, we're getting the SuperDuty Dana 60 ready to go onto the Jeep. The goal of the video today is getting our Motobuilt truss and coil tower mounts onto the SuperDuty 60 axle, which is right there. That way we are almost ready to get this thing underneath this thing. So to kick off the party here with the SuperDuty 60, like we talked about in the disassembly video, I am welding both sides of the pumpkin. I'm doing that because one, I cut into a little bit on this side when I was cutting the actual casting. And then two, it prevents your tubes from spinning, and it's just a little bit of added reinforcement. No one says that you have to do it. I just enjoy doing it for that added comfort of strength. What? All right guys, we have welded our pumpkin on both sides. That way it just gives us that extra strength. So now what we're ready to do is we're ready to start placing the actual truss on top of this thing. All right guys, truss is on the axle where it needs to be. Couple things. This right here is flush with the diff cover surface. So that is how that is intended to sit. So you're gonna get your pinion angle and everything off of the upper links and the lower links. I had to notch this corner of the truss right here for the weld that we did. Definitely, probably, if you can, don't weld it until you see where it sits, because I know I said that in the disassembly video and then I went and welded it first anyway, so yeah, good on me, I guess. But this is the base of the truss here, and our full hydro will obviously come off and taper off of these ends here. But main thing I wanted to get at was this is flush with the diff cover surface. So what we need to do now is we need to tack this in a bunch of places so that way it doesn't move. And we're gonna take it off and we're gonna weld the bulk of this truss actually on the bench instead of on the axle itself. So you're gonna see me making a bunch of tacks on anything where I think it might move, because we don't want this to move at all. So we're gonna do that, tack it all up, and go from there. So one of the key reasons I actually took the truss off to weld it, one, because it's way easier, and two, because you can lay some beads inside of some of this stuff here that you wouldn't be able to if the truss was on. So I'm not gonna weld the whole thing solid through on the inside. It's kind of a waste, but I am gonna give it a couple beads here and there, just adding to that strength factor. You know, the whole reason we're putting the truss on is for strength, so let's make it as strong as possible wherever we can, you know? All right guys, so while we're letting the truss cool down, I'm gonna put the coil tower mounts on. These are from Motobuilt. They're super cool. They actually fit where the factory coil perch would sit, and then you just get some new shorter bolts, put that in, and these have to be welded actually onto the knuckles. So once we get the truss back over here and we start welding on it, we're gonna get these coil, this is your lower coilover mount for the front. So super cool design. Actually, probably one of my favorite things I bought so far. So yeah, we're gonna get them mounted up and then we'll get back on the truss. All right, the main portion of the Motobuilt SuperDuty truss is all welded up. Now we can go ahead and set it back onto the actual SuperDuty axle. All right guys, we have the truss onto the SuperDuty 60 axle now. I wanted to do this video in one day, but I ended up having customers come and just took up the rest of the day. So key points on this: make sure that the top of the truss is flush with the mounting surface of the diff cover. Make sure that this truss fits very like perfectly. So make sure that there's no gaps or anything like that. Couple different trains of thought on welding this. There's welding the actual cast pumpkin and there's not welding the actual cast pumpkin. I'm just gonna go through and weld everything that's touching the tubes. Some people will weld the pumpkin. With that, I caution you, if you do that, you have to preheat the actual pumpkin itself, and then you have to wrap it in a blanket and cool it down at the same time, or that's how you'll get your cracks in your welds and stuff. I have successfully welded TIG on pumpkins before, but I don't feel the need to weld this little 6-inch section here. So we're gonna get started just going through and welding pretty much everything on this, and then don't forget we also have our coil towers we have to weld, and then we'll be able to get the hydraulic ram portion of the truss in. Now that our truss is finished being welded, we got to get these coil tower mounts welded. They should take just a couple seconds to do. All right, guys, the truss is in its final resting place. So as you can see, I welded here. I welded all the little notches here, all these bars on both sides. That will give us plenty of strength that we need for this truss to actually stay on the axle. Now, we need to change gears a little bit. We got to come over to our full hydro ram. That is this right here. This does come with hardware. My box for Motobuilt broke and the hardware came out, so that's en route. I just have some bolts kind of sitting here keeping this flush. And what we'll do is we'll get, I'll get the camera set up and everything, and then we'll go through kind of how we have to mount all this stuff. So this little kit from Motobuilt, this is actually 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 pieces. So this is gonna mount from the truss here to the hydro ram. This has to get welded on. So this is actually a D-ring, and what this is for is actually to suck the frame down to the axle. Gives you traction on like steep climbs and stuff. So we'll set that off to the side for right now. The next kind of pieces of the puzzle here are your cover for your diff. This is a removable cover so you can still get your diff cover off. The actual cradle for the hydraulic ram, and then this is where the ram actually mounts to the plate. So I bolted my little cover to the plate that the ram mounts to, and I'll just set it down in there. We'll make sure it's set up correctly. And then this inner plate actually gets welded into the cradle here, and then this whole cradle gets welded to our axle and our truss, and then this obviously comes down, bolts here and on the truss. So we're gonna get this all centered up. We're gonna get it welded in place, and then once this is welded in place, we're gonna be ready to go back over to the axle and start getting our hydraulic ram mount actually mounted onto the Jeep. All right, so we have our mounting plate, the cradle, and then our little diff cover plate exactly where it needs to be. Now what we need to do with this is just get this inner plate welded to the cradle itself. Do not weld in these 4 holes. That is where the actual hydraulic ram is going to mount to. All right guys, we have our cradle and full hydro mounting plate welded to itself. This thing's ready to get bolted up. I say bolted, it's got 4 bolts and then welded up to the axle. So we're gonna let this cool off for a second and then we'll get it over to the axle here and we'll get it mounted up, tacked up, bolted here, and we'll be almost done with our Motobilt SuperDuty 60 truss. All right, this is how the hydraulic ram sits. So as you can see, our little cover here, you pop that off and then you can get your diff cover off. So this piece will remove. You can still get into your diff cover and everything. Fits together just like a puzzle piece. You'll obviously get hardware with Motobilt. I got hardware, the UPS, I'm sure all of you guys know, sucks. So they broke they broke the box and lost the hardware. So this stuff's just sitting here for now. You will get nut certs to weld it in to that location, so that way you just zip the bolts down. But this is where it sits. I'm gonna get it tacked because as you can see, it's a little bit out of whack in some spots. I'm gonna get it pressed up against here and then tacked exactly where it needs to be. And then we'll go through finish weld this whole thing, and then that will be the completion of our monster Motobilt truss. So once you're done finish welding, just got to put your hook on. On this episode, we got the Motobilt full hydro truss on the SuperDuty Data 60. We got our coil tower mounts on. This thing is almost ready to get put into the Jeep. So we got to do the high steer on the knuckles. We got to convert the hubs over to 8-on-6.5. And then I got to wait for a couple parts to get here from shipping. And then this thing's ready to go under and we'll get basically our front stretch done. So this process was pretty time consuming. I got about 10 pounds of welding wire in this thing. As far as assembling it goes, it fits like a glove. It's like a puzzle piece. It's one of the reasons why I really like Motobilt. It's just the ease of being able to put this stuff on. It all fits perfectly. Like I said, not sponsored by Motobuilt. They don't even give me discounts or anything. If they wanted to though, that would be cool. But yep, I just really do enjoy Motobuilt stuff. That's why I'm going with it on the Jeep. So hopefully you guys like this episode. If you did, don't forget to comment, like, and subscribe. Thank you guys for watching. We'll catch you on the next one.